So we're going to go over and review expressions, equations, and inequalities. So the first thing that we're going to look at is expressions. So it says expand the following expression, meaning make it large. Like dollar bills, y'all. So what that means is I'm going to take this negative 12 and I'm going to multiply it by this x. When I'm multiplying, a negative times a positive is a negative. So basically I'm going to keep the negative 12 and just add its little x friend to it, because it's still multiplying. Then what you're going to do is make sure you take that negative 12 to the negative 5. So basically I'm multiplying negative 12 and a negative 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. And a negative times a positive would give me negative. So in expanded form, this would be your final answer. We're not going to reduce. We're not going to try to make it smaller because it was already smaller. I wanted to make it larger. So again, anytime it says expand and it has parentheses such as this, all you're doing is distributing. So 3x times 8, 3 times 8 is 24, and carry the x down with it. So I know a lot of you got confused when you saw an x and a y, and you're like, what the heck do I do? Do I put it to the exponent? Do I do whatever? No, just put them next to each other. So I'm going to take 3x and multiply it by a negative 7y. Well, a negative times a positive is a negative. 3 times 7 is 21. And all I'm going to do is carry the x and the y and put them next to each other. Boom! Because remember, this is multiplying. So let's do the next few. So again, I want you to try these two on your own. Expand them yourself, doing the same process, taking negative 15 and multiplying it by negative 3x. And then taking negative 15 and multiplying it by 4y. Go ahead and do so now. Now that you've done so, what you should have gotten when I multiply 15 times 3, I get 45. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So I have 45x. And then I'm going to take 15 and multiply it by 4, which is 60. So a negative times a positive is a negative. 15 times 4 is 60, and carry the y with it. For our next one over here, you're going to multiply 2 times 9, which is going to give me 18. Carry the x down. Remember, everything in the parentheses, if there's a number such as 2 on the outside, has to be distributed to everything in the parentheses. Literally anything, everything. 13 times 2, 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 1 is 2. So they're both positives, so I know my answer is going to be plus 26. Okay, so again, anytime you see it say expand the following expression, all you're doing is just distributing into the parentheses. So now there's a difference between expanding and factoring. Expanding means making it larger, factoring means making it smaller. So in order to factor the following expressions, what you always need to do is draw your parentheses. This is a really good strategy to do, and I know that the first number here is going to have an x attached to it, so I'm going to put the x there. Now I know both of my answers are positive, so I'm going to say plus. Now what I'm going to be looking at is what times 4 and what times 22 that's the same number, such as 4, 2, 3, 8, 5, 7, whatever. What can I take out of both of those to put right in front of this parentheses? Well, I know that I can take a 2 out of 4 because 2 times 2 is 4, or I could take a 4 out. Well, let's look at what the factors are for 22. I know the factors of 22 are 11 and 2, and 22 in itself. So what do these both have in common? Well, they both have a 2 in common. So I can take a 2 out of both of these equations, or both of these two numbers. So now I can look at it like this. What times 2 will give me a 4? A 2. So look at this. 2 times 2 is going to give me a 4x. Then what times 2 will give me 22? 11. So now I have factored this completely. Let's look at this one over here that says negative 5x minus 25. I know that they're both negatives. So first, I'm going to draw my parentheses. I'm going to put my x right there. And I know they're both going to be negative, so I need to figure out what they both can go into. Well, 5 can only go into 5 and itself, while 25 can go into 5 times 5. So guess what I'm taking out? 5. Since they're both negatives, and honestly, you could have negatives on the inside if you really wanted to, but since they're both negative, I'm actually going to take this negative and put it with this negative 5 on the outside of the parentheses. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the common factor that they both have, which is 5. I know they're both negative, so I'm going to have negative 5 on the outside of my parentheses. And what times negative 5 will give me a negative 5x? A 1. So right here next to the x, I could put a 1, or I could just leave it as x, whichever you prefer. Now the real question is, what times negative 5 will give me a negative 25? Well, I know that a negative times a negative is a positive, so I can't have a minus sign here, so I'm actually going to have a plus, because a negative times a positive is a negative. So then this would be a 5. So I want you to try the next two down here on your own and see if you can come up with it. Now that you've paused the video, let's see if we can figure it out. So I know my a is going to be here, and since I know that these both are not negative, I'm actually going to have a minus sign between a and whatever my next number is. So if I factor both of these, I know that they both go into 5. So I'm actually going to have a 5 on the outside of my parentheses. 5 times something will give me 5a, which would be 1. And I know that 5 times negative 8 will give me a negative 40. So 5 times 8 will give me 40, and that's the only negative one. Looking at the second one here, draw my parentheses, draw my x. Now there's two different ways that you can go about this. There might be two different answers. Okay, I know that these both can go into 5. Okay, I know that they're both going to go into 5, so I'm going to put a 5 outside on the parentheses. And I know that this is a negative 10, so I'm actually going to have a negative number here. And what's going to be 5 times negative something give me negative 10? It's going to be a 2. Plus 5 times something will give me 35, which is 7. So you could have an answer like that, or realistically, if you wanted to have no negatives, in the inside for the first one, you can honestly have your answer like that. Either of these answers would be correct because a negative times a negative is a positive, so you'd get positive 35. So let's move on to another one. Our next topic is going to be two-step equations. So we've dealt with these before. Okay, make sure that we can distribute. There's no parentheses or anything. 2 times x would give me 2x. A negative times a positive is going to give me a negative. 2 times 4 is 8. Since I did nothing to the 16, all I'm going to do is just bring it down. So when we're solving equations, we're solving for x, or y, or q, or whatever letter it is. So I need to get to this 2x by itself. I need to get rid of this negative 8. The opposite of a negative 8 is a positive 8. So I'm going to add 8 on both sides because I want this completely gone. So that way I'm just left with 2x. And 16 plus 8 is going to be what? I'm going to get 24. So is x by itself? Nope, there's still a 2 attached to it. So remember, when they're next to each other, it means a multiplication or a marriage. The opposite of that is going to be divorce or division. So I'm going to divide both sides by whatever is attached to the x. In this case, it's 2. 24 divided by 2 is going to give me 12. I can always double check my answer by plugging it back in. So 12 minus 4 is what? 8. 8 times 2 is 16, which it's true. So now I have the next equation. Always get your variable X, Q, L, whatever letter, all by itself. So if you can recall, we've talked about kicking people out of your house. So let's say it's you and your dog, and you want to get rid of your sister, which is this +6. How are you going to get her out of the house? You're going to subtract her out of this house. Get rid of her. Not really. So if I subtract her out of my house or your house, you're going to get 33 on the outside of your house, and it's just going to be you and your dog. Since you want your dog out of your house because it's negative and you're not very happy with a negative, sad doggy, you're going to divide it out of your house because you're next to each other. You're right next to each other, meaning you love each other and you love each other and you love your dogs. Everyone does. And those cancel out. So you have x equals a negative divided by a positive is a negative. 33 divided by 3 is 11. So we have -11. So let's move on to the second set here. So now instead of multiplying, we're going to do something different for these. Not really, but same thing. We still need to get this x divided by 3 by itself. So I need to get rid of this -4, meaning cancel it and move to the other side. The opposite of that would be add 4 to both sides. Negative and positive cancel. I'm left with x over 3 equals, if I owe you $40, I only give you 4. I still owe you money, and I owe you $36. Sorry. So we already have, you're already like basically kicked out of your house, or you kicked your dog out of your house, and you want them back in. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So in this case, you're going to multiply both sides by 3, because I need both of these two to cancel, so that way my x is by itself. If I take 36 and multiply it by 3, we're going to get 108. But it's going to be a -108 because a negative times a positive is a negative. Then we move to the next one here. Get rid of your 12 because I need this x divided by -4 completely on its own. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides, leaving me with x over -4 equals, well, these are both negative numbers. Remember, keep, change, change. Keep this the same, change this, and change it to negative. So if I owe you $14 and I take 12 more from you, I'm going to owe you $26. Sorry. And again, last step, my x is not by itself at all, so I need to do the opposite of division, which would be multiplication. And how you know what to multiply or divide both sides by to get x by itself is whatever's attached to it. This is attached to a -4. This one was attached to a 3. So we're going to get rid of them. Negative times a negative we know is a positive. So I'm going to multiply 26 times 4. And I get 104 for my x. So let's move on. In our next video, we're actually going to talk about inequalities and how to do them.